here we go. My first true woodworking project done in the new shop with all the new tools. My wife requested that I make her a nightstand to match the other nightstand that's in our bedroom. This one's not going to match the other nightstand. The other nightstand was just a few pieces of wood slapped together, and I made a cherry panel for the top of that one as well. It turned out nice. The top is probably the nicest part about that nightstand. This nightstand is actually drawn out, designed. There's purpose to what I'm doing here. Before, like I said, it just slaps some wood together. Here you go, there's a nightstand. I used a tapering jig to taper the legs, and I cut some side panels and some 2x2s. I'm using all this wood, put it together to make kind of like a mission style / farmhouse style nightstand. Kind of matches the theme that my wife's going for throughout the house, a little farmhouse style. We do live on a farm, somewhat. We have farms all the way around us. We have our own little chicken ranch. There's kind of a motif that she's going for. So just using some pocket holes and some glue and some clamps to kind of hold everything together. It doesn't need to be structural by any means. It's a nightstand. It's not going to hold a TV or anything like that. I'm not going to be sitting up against it and pushing ourselves up from the dinner table. So the need for it to be super strong isn't there, but it's going to be strong enough. It's going to be plenty strong the way it's being put together. I had to get some wood filler in here so that I could paint it later, or get rid of all of the little gaps in the seams that were visible to the naked eye. So I'm going to be painting it, and I want it to all look seamless. So making it paint ready, I sanded it down to 120. I'm knocking down all the edges so that the paint will stick to the edges. The paint doesn't like to stick to 90-degree corners. It does better on a rounded edge than it does on a square edge. So here's the cherry panel that I put together. I just glued and clamped it, and this one eventually warped so much after pouring epoxy on it that I scrapped this one and made another one for the one that I'm making here in this video. But the process was pretty much the same. I glued and clamped with some biscuits, cherry wood, 3/4 of an inch. I could have gone thicker, but this is what I ended up with after milling down the lumber, and this is the side that, the size that I came up with after doing all that, because it was warped and twisted, and so I had to mill it down to basically 3/4 of an inch. I think I ended up a little bit fatter than that. So I'm putting this epoxy in the knot holes. I'm actually mixing it. There's more of a science to mixing epoxy, let me tell you. This is just eyeballing it, but I'm just eyeballing it so that I can seal the inside of the knot holes. This isn't an actual pour. This is just sealing it with a little paintbrush. That way, when I do pour the epoxy in the holes, it doesn't just get soaked right up in the wood. And when that happens, of course, there has to be some sort of an exchange of space. Air comes out as the epoxy is getting sucked in, and then you're having to deal with all sorts of air bubbles. And you'll see, I did put tape on the bottom of the panel underneath that knot hole there that's farthest away from the camera, because that one went all the way through. And you'll see here in just a moment that even after sealing the hole, I still had some bubbles coming up, probably just a void that I wasn't able to see or seal up with the paintbrush. So when you're doing this, you kind of want to overfill the hole because it will eventually kind of suck down into the hole as it cures. And the new panel that I made for the nightstand, when it's finished, I had to do the same thing. I had a knot hole that I needed to fill. So I just sanded it down to 220, made it nice and smooth. Here I'm just making some filler panels for the inside of the nightstand. That way I can mount the drawer slides to it. I had to plane it down to the thickness of whatever recess I had there. I can't remember what size, maybe 5/8 of an inch at best. I just used some glue and the clamps to hold it together, and then some brad nails to secure it. Believe me, they weren't going anywhere. They were cut tight for that space. So now building the drawer, I just used a simple rabbet joint in the front panel and the back panel, and then glued the side panels in, again using some brad nails to secure. And I clamped it all together, let the glue set up overnight, made sure that it was square. I cut a groove in the side and back panels to accept a 1/4 inch piece of plywood for the bottom. Actually turned out really well. I'm very surprised, very happy for my first attempt at making any sort of sliding drawer in a table. How everything turned out real nice and square. So after taking it out of clamps, gave it a nice light sanding. Didn't have to be anything spectacular. I wasn't painting this. It was just going to be a simple knockdown of whatever wood grain was, that you could feel. So I had to add some filler strips in the back because I didn't want the drawer to slide all the way in the back. I wanted it to be spaced out so that it matched the recesses on the sides. There I cut the drawer front. I'm adding the drawer slides here. In the drawer front I had to use some spacing, thin pieces of cardboard for spacing. That way all the reveal around the whole drawer looked good. But I wanted to make sure that the bottom reveal more so than the top reveal, because the bottom reveal you could see, the top reveal you could not because the tabletop overhung the front there and you weren't able to see that. I'm using a high volume low pressure sprayer to spray the paint on. That turned out really nice stuff. I like the finish on it. You could see the wood grain through the paint. Not like through the paint, but under the paint, it almost like brought out or highlighted the wood grain. It's just fitting the drawer slide back in the drawer. Here I'm using some of those figure 8 tabletop fasteners. Those turned out okay. I used a Forstner bit to just cut the recess for them, and then it just screws on. And they're pretty simple to use. I'm marking out some spots for the drawer pull. My dad gave me an antique green glass drawer pull, and it's cool because it has the people who had it before years ago painted it, and you can still see some of the paint after it has chipped off or fallen off over the years. Just gives it a really nice rustic antique look to it. I had to fashion my own little fastening system for this. And Now for the final reveal. Turned out really nice. Little farmhouse, a little rustic, a little refined. And that drawer pull really sets it off. Well, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next project.